Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Father Paul. I serve as the president of St. Vincent, and it's an honor for me to welcome you all to this Threshold Lecture. It is a distinct pleasure, on behalf of the college, to welcome Dr. Roger Malina for the 82nd presentation of our Threshold Lecture Series. Threshold has been an integral part of St. Vincent College for the last 40-some years. It was begun with a partnership with local community foundations, in particular the Kennemetal Foundation, and the leadership of many of our faculty and monks. I'd like to just recognize for a moment one of those founders who was a monk and the 12th president of St. Vincent, Father Augustine Flood, who passed away this last week, and we just buried him yesterday. God rest him. But it is from the wonderful vision and forward thinking of so many in those days that we're able to be here tonight and to bring speakers of Dr. Malina's character and integrity and academic prowess for you here in the Latrobe, Westmoreland, Western Pennsylvania community. Dr. Malina is a physicist, astronomer, curator, and executive editor of Leonardo publications at MIT, serving dual appointments as professor of arts and technology and professor of physics at the University of Texas at Dallas. Malina focuses on the connections among the natural sciences, art, design, and humanities. Previously, he served as the director of Observatoire Astronomique de Marseille-Provence in Marseille, France, and as a principal investigator for the NASA Extreme Ultraviolet Explorer satellite at the University of California, Berkeley. As the longtime executive editor at Leonardo, Dr. Malina befriended Roman Verostko and several members of the Algorists group. It was these artists that helped pioneer the practice of using computer algorithms to generate their work. I'm excited to share that this afternoon, St. Vincent dedicated the Verostko Center for the Arts in honor of Roman Verostko. Roman is here with us today, and I'm going to ask Roman to please stand and be recognized for your contributions to art and your presence here today. The Verostko Center for the Arts is located in the Dale P. Latimer Library and houses our rare book and art collections, as well as the college's archive. We are very proud of this new space as it aims to feature artwork and programs that highlight intersecting disciplines, something we'll hear much more about during Roger's lecture tonight. Immediately following tonight's presentation, you are all invited to view the exhibitions that are on display in the Verostko Center, including Roman Verostko's retrospective exhibition. Please help me to welcome Dr. Roger Malina.
Hello, hello. Do I need to turn on the... Is that good? Good evening, everybody. It's a delight to be here. Two of my partners in crime are sitting in the front row here, Vonnie Mitchell and Roman. We have met on the road of life, tried to do things that other people were not doing, and succeeding.
Speak to the microphone.
Okay. But I think I'm speaking to two microphones. Okay. Okay, so my name's Roger Malina. It sounds a little bit, I sound a little bit funny because my mother was English and my father was from Texas. She taught me English. He didn't teach me anything. Like most fathers. No, I'm joking. He did teach me. My family background is Czech immigrants to Texas, and my grandfather was a butcher and a music teacher. a butcher, and a music teacher. Yep, you can be a hybrid professional and be good at more than one thing. Butchering helps you teach music better. Maybe not. So my talk this evening is addressed to the people in this room who are trying to figure out what to do next. And I was just talking to a retired gentleman over there who has total academic freedom. He's retired and he can work on the problem he wants to work on. And one of the world's growing resources is retired professionals who still have a lot of intelligence and a little bit more time than the employed professionals. So with that kind of joking introduction, let me just begin. So I decided to title my talk, There's Nothing New Under the Sun. So why did you invite Roger to come and talk? I have nothing new to say, and I'll explain that. But it turns out most of the universe is dark, and we don't know what it's made of. It doesn't emit light or radiation of any kind. Telescopes are no use to figure out what 80% or 90% of the universe is made of. So let's figure out what's in the dark using algorithms, maybe Roman. And as Roman and I have been preparing for this evening, somehow the idea came that Roman was an infiltrator, and that we need more infiltrators that infiltrate a discipline from underneath, which is very much what Roman did during his career. I don't think you ever took a course in computer science, did you? Did you? You just infiltrated the computer science world. This is a little bit, I'm trying to joke and just get you all relaxed. One of the things my father taught me was to have a very high tolerance for strange people. Now, some strange people you don't want to go out for dinner with. But some strange people have solved problems that we've needed to solve for centuries. And let me tell you, we have a few of those now. So next time a strange person knocks on your door, oh yeah, I'm an artist, but I want to do physics. Let's have a discussion. So for those of you that are academics, the last time I really tried to figure out what was going on in the dark was when the US government, your taxpayer dollar, paid a team of us to put together a huge report on, you called it intersectional, no, interdiscipline, I forget the term that was used, and we came up with this idea of network knowledge. Most of us grew up, and I'll show a slide later, where we know the tree of knowledge. Unfortunately, in a tree, the branches never talk to each other, just like departments in a university never talk to each other. But the roots do in a tree. And so anyway, if you're interested in, this is a few years ago, as Bonnie will remember, it was sort of a recap of the bubbling excitement that's going on internationally right now of the terminology I'll use this evening is hybrid professionals. In agriculture, hybrid plants tend to survive for millions of years. I'm thinking of the black tulip. Hybridized plants face challenges that pure plants with very clean genetic structures don't survive. I think there's a biochemist in the room, so I got to be careful with my generalization. So I would like to start with some disclaimers, warnings, and precautions. I know this is being recorded, so I'm not going to say anything illegal, but These days, there's always someone recording you, as you know. And over the pandemic, a group of us working in our home offices in our bedrooms got so much cabin fever, as they say in Texas, that we started meeting every week online, and we called ourselves the post-pandemic provocateurs. But we don't throw sticks and stones, we throw ideas, which can be as dangerous as machine guns. You don't agree, Roman? Okay. And we want to provoke desirable changes in the world we live in using what's called in the science of complex systems autopoiesis. Sometimes in a very complicated system, something wonderful happens from the bottom up. It just emerges, and Mattarella and Varana, Mattarella died during the pandemic, came up with this idea of autopoietic emergence in a complex system. And so by throwing ideas around, maybe we can provoke desirable changes in the world we live in, and I don't have to start making a list of the things that we'd like to improve around us. I had 2 high school interns in the first year of the pandemic. They were both Asian Americans, and they went suicidally depressive because of the anti-Asian public opinion, the Chinese virus, and on and on. And so somehow they were working at home as high school interns with us in our lab, and we said, why can't we eliminate racism in our society? Let's try quantum mechanics. Nobody's tried to eliminate racism using quantum mechanics. Are atoms racist? The physics student over there knows that atoms have no color. They're smaller than the wavelength of light. Atoms have no color. Atoms are not racist. Is the water molecule racist? Water molecules love all humans of any kind. Are viruses racist? Not this one. But some viruses do attack people of different genetic backgrounds than others. So the solution is we'll shrink humans to the size of big molecules, and that will eliminate racism from our society. And all I can tell you is those 2 Asian American high school students got so much stress relief from this little project. And it sounds like a joke. And it was led by a physics student that I have, who is from South Sudan in Africa, and her family is a refugee family. The war in Sudan, they had to move to Kenya, they had to move to somewhere else, and finally, she had a relative in Florida, and she came to America to study physics. And then somehow, she stumbled into our lab. Okay, as you can tell, I'm not a very serious physicist. I don't show equations, although I can use them. Algorithms, I think. Algorithms have equations, I think. No, you don't know algebra, Roman. And in the post-pandemic provocateurs, a colleague of ours who has a Center for Democracy at San Jose State University said, why don't we give the right to vote to plants and other animals as well as humans? Because climate change is affecting them as much as humans, so what do they think? Well, we decided that was not a very good idea, because imposing on plants the way that humans think is part of the problem. And we don't know how plants think. They certainly migrate with the help of birds that carry seeds around, and so on. Anyway, so I am going to get into a little bit of this in depth, but my jokes are serious, And I must say, one of the things that struck me coming here is in physics, we have all kinds of concepts of energy. And let me tell you, St. Vincent, the energy is hope. You know, I've come here, interacted with a lot of you over the last 2 days, and let me tell you, this place is bubbling with energy called hope. So, just to get more serious, I had a disturbed childhood, as many of you might have had. My father was a scientist and engineer, but when I came home from primary school, he was making paintings and doing art. On the left is one of his artworks. So that's what I thought engineers and scientists did. They paint. It wasn't until I got to high school that I realized my father was a bit strange. So he was a rocket scientist at Caltech in the 1930s. He and a bunch of students patented rocket fuels that are still used by NASA to send rockets into space. But he was an artist at the same time. And as a 6-year-old, it just didn't make sense. Yeah, that's what scientists and engineers do. They paint. And he wouldn't let me into his studio until 7 at night when he'd finished sketching his next painting. And his name was Frank Malina, and his father was the butcher and the music teacher. So my first career has been mentioned. I started off in physics and astrophysics. And just for those of you that are academics, if I was doing this talk 120 years ago, astronomy and physics were different disciplines. The astronomers never talked to the physicists. You don't need physics to understand the sky. I'm just going to study the sky and understand it. Then they decided that astronomers should collaborate with physicists, and a new discipline was born, astrophysics. So we forget that the history of disciplines, and the terminology I often like to use, is that to solve problems, you need ways of knowing. And there are many different ways of knowing. And sometimes to solve a hard problem, you need to combine those ways of knowing. So yes, a profession, a discipline, but how you go about solving a problem depends on the knowledge that you've developed of how to do things. And it is a problem in many of our institutions that we divide up the university into 20 different departments, and the professors spend almost no time together unless there's a free cocktail hour, as there was earlier this afternoon. When I was an undergraduate student, and I was telling some of the students here, the only valuable thing I got from MIT was my summer internships. The courses were great, I was interesting, excited, and I did a summer internship in a particle accelerator. And let me tell you, after 2 months doing particle physics, I decided I wanted to have nothing to do with it. And the next summer, I did an internship where I got paid, Roman, listen to this, I got paid to convert graphs of data into computer data by hand. You know, we had all the graphs, and I had to digitize it by making computer cards of the data. But it turned out, we analyzed the data, we discovered an exploding star that emitted radiation that nobody had ever heard of, X-rays. At the time, we didn't study X-rays coming from stars. And so let me tell you, the thrill of discovery, doing boring work, converting a graph into numbers, led me to the career I followed. But To observe the sky in X-rays, you have to get above the atmosphere of the Earth. And my provocation joke is, if you were going to design a human being to understand the universe, you wouldn't design humans. We're badly designed to understand the world above us. Yeah, astrology worked very well for thousands of years. Oh yeah, there's an eclipse tomorrow night. I think there's a lunar eclipse tomorrow night. And we can predict them. And astrologers got very good at predicting eclipses and falsely claiming that a US president would die because of the eclipse or something, that there was a correlation between astronomical phenomena and human crises. Yeah, maybe a bit. And this was the map of the sky that we made in a very special wavelength of light, and I don't want to confuse you, but none of this light reaches the surface of the Earth. It all gets blocked by the Earth's atmosphere, and it even gets blocked by a lot of the clouds in the solar system. You may not know, but in between the planets, there are clouds. We don't see them, but they absorb this kind of light. This is the first time in human history anybody had made a map of the sky in this color. And as I was joking to people, if we saw nothing, it was a discovery, and I got my PhD anyway, and if we discovered something, it was a discovery. And all I can tell you is science can be very motivating, but it also can be very routine and repetitive. And any of you that have worked in research labs know what I'm talking about. So, as was mentioned in the introduction, I took over a role with people like Vani and, what's your name again? We've been joking about memory. Roman. Leonardo. So I now serve as the executive editor of the Leonardo publications at MIT Press. We publish books and journals, and I set up 2 startup companies, nonprofits. And Leonardo is really dedicated to the work of scientists deeply engaged in the arts and humanities, artists seeking to appropriate science and technology for their own cultural purposes, but people studying these strange people. I'm sure people have been writing about you, Roman, because you are strange. And we championed these people who were treated as strange by their institutions. What do you mean you're doing both art and science at the same time? Just, what is the insult? Oh, you're a master of no trade and whatever the joke is. You're a master of none and something or other. And to our remark, we've now published over the 55 years of this particular set of publications, 10,000 people like Roman. It was founded in 1967, 68 by a group of strange people in Paris, France, and Roman actually met some of those people. And it's a growing community of people. And so some of you may know in this country, there's been a lot of concern about that we need more scientists and engineers, STEM. Well, thanks to the work that we were funded to do, we argued that we need more people that are hybrids that combine expertise in an art and a science. Now, you can't be a polymath and just dabble in everything. You did need to focus. And then I was forced to retire in France, where I was working as an astronomer. And so I got offered a job at the University of Texas at Dallas, where we have a research lab It's kind of like a studio. If you can tell me the difference, good luck. And we work on problems that cannot be solved unless artists, scientists get together at the beginning of the problem, defining the problem together. How are we going to solve it? And you get into an area that's called the science of team science. I think I have a slide on that later, but hybrids are not all that uncommon. Now, I'm sorry this image is not big enough, but on the top, some of you of an earlier generation will know what the Morse code was. Samuel Morse invented the Morse code. How did he make a living? As a landscape painter. Samuel Morse, who invented the Morse code and changed the world as we know it as part of the telecommunications revolution, earned a living as a landscape painter. And most history books don't mention that. Okay, I can't see what I was going to say. So yeah, hybrids are not all that uncommon. A physiologist called Robert Bernstein studied the careers of the most successful scientists called Nobel Prize winners. And what did he discover? Did they work on the weekend and at night? No. Nobel Prize winners tended to have avocations in the arts. They worked very hard, obviously, on their science, but they were also musicians or dancers and so on. It's a correlation. Nobel Prize winners tend to have avocations in the arts, and they don't work 80 hours a week like a lot of my colleague scientists do. So, and so, you know, some of these things are so obvious that if you over-focus too much on one thing, you may not solve the problem. Your mind needs the agility to look at it from a different perspective and come up with different ways of working on it. But, yes, we do need disciplines. We have shoemakers and people who make shoes for horses. What are those called? Horseshoe makers. They don't talk to each other. They were guilds in the Middle Ages. Yes, we need disciplines, but we also need hybrids that cross the disciplinary boundaries to solve problems that cannot be solved in any other way. So, thanks to Roman, I've now converted this idea into infiltration, and I think there is someone in the room whose parents' name is on the Science Center here. And I think it's just across the parking lot. So let me encourage the students who are in the Science Center to infiltrate the Arts Center, and the students who are studying the arts to infiltrate the physics building and the science building. That doesn't mean you have to take courses endlessly do a double major. You can be a physicist, but you can spend a lot of time in the Verosco Art Center. So infiltration is a little bit different than professional development. And I don't know how we came up with that as we were joking a couple of days ago. So let's encourage the students in this college to infiltrate each other's departments. It's so easy to do because so many courses are online, and you can go and put questions in the chat that are very disturbing to the professional physicists because it's an artist who asked the question, and vice versa. Back to my strange narrative. And so I'm gonna have to stop thanking you, Roman, so much, but For better or for worse, you and I have interacted over decades and changed each other's minds a little bit each time. So here's an example of a hybrid. His name is François-Joseph Lapointe. He has a PhD in molecular biology. He studies the microbiome, all the genetic material that's not ours that we have inside our body. I was on his second PhD committee, which is a PhD in dance. What a strange guy. He got a PhD in molecular biology and then a PhD in dance. And he came up with techniques for translating into dance movements the structures of molecules. And it gets really interesting because he also got interested on how when people shake hands, they exchange germs. This was 15 years ago. And at a conference, he set up a table and he would shake people's hands and then take a swab and analyze it. And let me tell you, after about a day, nobody shook hands in that conference anymore. And it's so obvious, but it was a performance, you know, this handshaking and the, and unfortunately, he could tell that certain germs moved through the conference during the week. So yes, some hybrids combine the arts and sciences to solve unlikely problems or find unlikely solutions. Another one that I think, certainly Bonnie and Roman both know her, is Donna Cox. She's an MFA artist. What the hell does she know? She became the deputy director of the Illinois Supercomputing Center. She was an MFA artist who became the deputy director of a supercomputing center. She'd never taken a programming course in her life, but she did learn how to program. And she invented, and now it's so obvious to everybody, the metaverse, VR, AR. You could fly through the universe through her software in a planetarium. So she kind of broke the bubble on virtual reality, and this is in the 80s. She's still an MFA artist, and so why is it difficult to be a hybrid today? Well, I found an image, but I can't be sure of its provenance. So the tree of knowledge is a very antique notion that you have to divide knowledge into subdisciplines, otherwise it's just too complicated. And yeah, that's been a pretty good theory for a couple of thousand years, but I think we need to cut down the tree of knowledge. And the problem is we then translate this way of thinking into the structure of our organizations. So this is an org chart. It's a tree of knowledge. There's a marketing department, there's a publicity department, there's an engineering department. And so this is where I think we're in an era where many educational institutions are trying to help create the bridges between the disciplines. Now, I don't want to exaggerate. Many people are quite happy being an amazing expert in one discipline all their career, and we need people like that. But, okay, as I was trying to find references for this talk that might fit in with the historical perspective of the Jesuits, I found some work of von Humboldt, who was a German explorer who went to South America. And I used to teach in Colombia in the summer. And I learned, to my amazement, that he employed artists to explore South America and find the minerals. This is a painting by Caldas, who was part of Humboldt's team of exploration in Colombia itself. And let me tell you, it is not photorealistic. The artist has exaggerated the things that matter more and suppressed the things that matter less. So you'll get the idea pretty quickly. I mean, nobody has ever seen a mountain like that. But he's got words on every 30 feet of what kind of rock was there, and it's kind of a geological map of a mountain. So there was a research explorer trying to find valuable minerals in South America who employed artists to help them find them. So it's an analogy. I don't want to exaggerate, but I find the paintings of Caldas just intriguing. So, people have been talking about this for centuries, millennia, that we do need experts, and we do. But one of the things that's happened, and Roman is just an amazing example of it, is for the first time in a long time, artists and scientists use the same tools, computers. And if you use the same tool as someone else, you tend to think in related ways. Oh, algorithm. I can use algorithms in art, and I can use them in business. And so I think we underestimate the impact of artists and scientists sharing the same tools. Now, yes, they use hammers and screwdrivers, so I don't want to over-exaggerate, but I think the digital age has really enabled a very new way of thinking about the disciplines. And I don't need to tell the young people in this room, you're born networked. It is so much easier today for an artist to collaborate with a scientist than it was 100 years ago. You know, you had to go knock on the door. I mean, you couldn't just text someone and say, can I have some of your data so I can make some art with it? And so the network generation facilitates collaboration across disciplinary boundaries. And that's more like a sociological effect, that scientists and artists tend to work in different silos. And yeah, they might meet to have drinks in the evening. But once you are all working online, it enables a cross-discipline collaboration. Okay, so then I won't go into more details there. Okay, the other thing that's new, and I never studied the science. One other thing that's new is the biological and cognitive sciences are changing fundamentally the way we think our brains function. I'm just reading right now a big review article on human memory. Yeah, the short-term and long-term, but it's so much more complicated and interested in that. How is it you get someone to remember something? And we have such a different understanding of how human brains work, including how two people's brains affect each other. You've probably heard of neuromirrors, whatever it's called. But why is it that two dancers on a stage, after they've been dancing together for 2 years, they can dance with their eyes closed, practically. They're spinning, and then they can't, one of them throws one in the air, and the other one spins around and catch them before they fall. So our brains do have the ability, and I'm not talking about ESP or anything, but two people that work closely together, their brain functions begin to correlate in certain ways. And there's a growing literature, and I'm very, very interested in how we bridge the neurosciences with the arts today and the sciences. how does a brain discover something? I think we have different understandings today of creativity and innovation, blah, 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 blah. There's actually a field called neuroaesthetics, which has not really succeeded in explaining a lot of things. So here is a physicist advocating the work of neuroscientists, because I think I will do better physics if I understand how my brain works, given contemporary knowledge of the brain. Okay, I'm gonna just, the other thing, and I'll just mention this very quickly and skip it. So we live in what's called the big data age. People are making decisions about us based on data without asking our advice or opinion or anything. And historian of science Daniel Boorstin, who was the Librarian of Congress, made this totally stupid statement. 150 years ago, we were meaning rich and data poor. We now live in a world that's data rich and meaning poor. And then he had some jargon. He called this an epistemological inversion as fundamental as the Copernican revolution. Now, we now know planets go around the sun. We didn't used to think that. He was convinced. I mean, you know, the simple story that he would tell is how Charles Darwin, who came up with the theory of evolution, had so little data. If you visit his home, he has about 20 notebooks of data that he penciled in, and he had other people. It was so difficult to collect data, and he had to travel around the world on boats and study turtles and study different plants to try and understand. I mean, Darwin was data-starved, but he came up with the theory of evolution, which in many applications seems to work. Today, we're flooded with data, and we just don't know how to make sense of it. We mistrust data. We can't tell the difference between fake data and verified data. And so I think one of the things that's going on, and some of the students in my lab are data artists. They make sculpture using data as a raw material. And if it's high-quality data, the surface is smooth. And if it's noisy data, the surface of the sculpture is rough. I know which part of the sculpture I'm going to trust, the smooth side. That's an anecdote, but it's actually doable. And then I'm going to just, I think, wrap up with this thing that I have been very disturbed by meeting a different Roman. His name is Sundar Surukai. He works in Bangalore, India. He's a philosopher of science. He was a dean at one of the big universities in India. And he wrote a book that changed my mind on the ethics of curiosity. He said, you know, in India, discovery is not driven by curiosity, it's driven by doubt. Isn't that the same thing? No, it's not. Oh, is this thing real? That's not the same as curiosity. And I have to be careful in this audience. As you know, St. Augustine, I read his book with great pleasure, blamed curiosity for leading him astray from the path to God. If only I hadn't been such a curious young man, I wouldn't have strayed away from the path to God. Francis Bacon, not Francis Bacon, I'm thinking of a scientist in the Middle Ages. He said, I'm not motivated by curiosity, I'm motivated by charity. Well, today, what do you tell your kids? Curiosity is childlike, it's innocent. Okay. And, you know, this sounds so obvious that in Western culture, we use curiosity in science to discover things, without realizing that in other cultures, you can have other motivators for coming up with inventions and discoveries than curiosity. And In his case, he said in one Indian culture, doubt is the motivator. Are you real or are you not real? Okay, I'm going to skip that. Oh, I'm just going to end. I'm going to try and bring Roman and Bonnie maybe into the conversation, maybe not. During my career in physics, I've met some amazing artists. This is Rachel Mayeri. I set up a residence for her in our Center for Primatology in Marseille, in the south of France. And she wanted to create art and movies for monkeys. Well, that's not really a market. I don't think monkeys would pay to watch videos. But she got really interested in creating artworks for non-human primates. And yeah, all primates will watch a movie if there's a lot of violence in it. And it doesn't matter if it's humans killing humans or monkeys killing humans, primates will watch a movie with primates killing each other. Sex also. But what an interesting question. How would you create an artwork to capture the attention of a baboon? Then you get into sort of post-colonial discourse. Why should we impose on monkeys the same kind of art making that we do for humans? But that's part of what she was trying to unwrap. I think I have one more example that I'd just like to. Okay, so I'm going to skip this one. Okay, so I'm going to show this to just take the time. So a colleague of Roman and Bonnie's of mine is a strange man that I met in the Australian outback teaching at a small college of about 1,200 students. And he was really interested in robotics as an artist. Not algorithms, robots. Well, I know robots need algorithms. And he actually built himself an artificial third arm. You can see he's holding 3 pens, one in his 2 real arms and one in the robotic arm to the left of the picture. And when I was in his studio, he said, look, I can now write with 3 hands on the blackboard. Now, it took a lot of practice. I mean, already writing on a blackboard with 1 pen is difficult. Writing on 2, you have to really concentrate. Writing with 3 is mind-boggling. And he said, you know, Roger, you know, Stellark said, Roger.
I know Stellark personally very well.
You have an anecdote?
Well, I have a drawing from his third arm, but in number, let's say the International Symposium on Electronic Art, 1992 in Sydney, Australia. He performed with not just his third arm, he's been here in Minneapolis.
Okay.
He has demonstrated here.
The thing he said to me when I was in his studio was, you know, Roger, I can no longer say on the one hand this, on the other hand that.
No,
My third hand says, what about me? Why in politics do we have a left wing and a right wing? What about the middle wing? No, I mean, it's such a stupid statement, you know. But
and in my home, in my studio, and we've exchanged stuff. Yes.
Okay, so then just to round that quote out from Stellark, Einstein said, our ideas are as independent of the shapes of our bodies as our clothing is. Who's going to make a shirt with 4 arms? What a waste of silk. The shape of our ideas are as independent of the shape of our bodies and minds as our clothing is. And that's sort of what Stellark pointed out, that humans, for instance, are obsessed by symmetry. Physicists are obsessed by symmetry. Why? because I am a bilaterally symmetric human. I have 2 legs, 2 ears, and things that have 3 ears are ugly, not desirable. What do you mean you got 3 ears on your head? Go away, I'm not gonna date you. But the simple idea that our physicality affects the way we think. And I don't know whether Einstein knew I would be quoting him 100 years later. The other thing that Stellark did, I think you may remember, is he built himself a robot with 8 legs, like a spider. You'd think if you had 8 legs, it would be really easy to run and walk. He never figured out how to walk with 8 legs. What order do you move them in? How does this, I've got to run that way, the spider says. Which legs do I move to do that? and I think that was a failed artwork, his robotic spider with 8 legs. Okay, I'm gonna skip this stuff. Okay, I had a question for you, Roman. When I was researching you to get ready for this talk, it came to my attention that you spent some time in Atelier 17 in Paris, France, where a very eminent artist called Stanley William Hayter was an expert in printing and lithography and all these things. That's a list of some of the artists that worked in his studio. For some reason, your name isn't on that list, and you told me you actually never took a formal course there.
I'm not on that list. Nobody would have known me then. Hayter, I knew Hayter quite well, though, in the end. And he was a very important person.
And so there, for people of a different generation, you know what a hacker and makerspace is. He was a hacker maker in the 1950s. He had a place where you could print things, do...
The point, Roger, is this. What you have to know about printmaking is really the generation before Hayter.
Yes.
And Hayter tried to carry it into the future, but Hayter was on the wrong ship. It's really going to be digital ultimately. But that's another story. That's a big piece of history.
Okay, thank you. Bonnie, do you have anything you want to just throw in? One of Bonnie's obsessions is archiving digital matter, including Roman's work. Why is it so difficult, Bonnie, to archive digital things?
Help me out.
Oh, no, Bonnie is going to reply.
Me a question
I'm
about
asking
the
Bonnie.
archive.
I'm sorry. We have 3 minutes left. So,
okay. Well, I would say inconsistency in the type of information that's out there. And I'm trying to put it in a box, and it doesn't fit into boxes. That is exactly what you're talking about here.
And one of the challenges, and you and I have been involved, artists don't know how to document their digital art in a way where 50 years later you can convert it into new software. And so a lot of digital art is just so vaguely documented that you don't really know which computer was used to do it, et cetera, et cetera. And so if there are any digital artists in the room, please exhaustively describe the software you use, the computers you use to make your digital art, because otherwise, 50 years from now, nobody will be able to access it. Is that?
Well, it's not the artists so much. And we're actually working on a much larger project that you might not be aware of, is that we're connecting archives from all around the world. And so we're working on creating this connection between the File Festival archive of digital art down in Brazil and SIGGRAPH and IZEA. And it wasn't so much the artists not documenting it, it was the publications, because we're drawing from publications of the work. the proceedings, the catalogs, the,
Okay, so
and some things cannot be categorized.
the students in the room won't know what I'm talking about, but terminology keeps changing in the art and technology field. We had computer art, interactive art, digital art, multimedia art, and we keep coming up with new descriptions.
This has been written about enough. The point is, it was computer art in the 80s, it's digital art here, and so forth. The point is, we had a revolution. It was an algorithmic revolution. There are many tentacles.
It's algorithmic art.
But it changed culture. It doesn't matter what you say, the algorithm is at the heart.
But the
That's
poor,
it.
but the poor
I mean,
archivist doesn't know what it is if you don't describe it correctly.
Don't get me excited.
He's getting excited.
Don't get me excited.
Okay. So we just published a book that I think will be available next week called The Art in the Age of Machine Learning. Well, okay. And so whether we like it or not, artificial intelligence is now about as smart as a puppy or a kitten. It knows how to get something to eat. Well, actually, no. Computers don't put the plug in themselves yet, but it'll come.
No, that's true.
Well, if you have solar cells, then the computer can walk
think
to the
we
sun.
all recognize that.
And you know, part of us is morally disturbed that artificial intelligence is taking over so many of the things that humans used to do. And when I was in this conference in Paris a few days ago, I'm out of time, there was a discussion that I found a little bit disturbing. Should we teach AI machines intuition?
Is this open for discussion?
Yeah.
Well, here's my view. It's changing every day, but I'm very interested in the anthropology of Yuval Harari.
Uh-huh.
And if you read Homo sapiens and Deus sapiens, it's evolution. Human consciousness is being displaced.
And there's an algorithm for
we're
it.
not, that is to say, there's an evolution. We're in the midst of pretty radical change. And who's going to be ultimately in charge? Right now, the world is mostly running on algorithms. Less than human judgment is not in charge. We have
Maybe
handed
we
over,
should teach AI judgment.
We write the code, but we give the code the power to make the
decisions.
decision. I don't make. So when I write the code, I give the power
to the machine.
Code to make the decision. And those decisions are now, with artificial intelligence, this is what I spoke about today. We have been in a revolution, and we are at a different time in human evolution. We better wake up to what this is and where we want it to go. But there's not much choice tomorrow when the stock market opens, if it's what is today. Well, anyway.
Okay, so
The algorithms in the market are in charge. The algorithms everywhere are in charge.
let's not go into voting fraud where the algorithms vote for the people. Should we teach AI machines curiosity or empathy or compassion? Maybe AI software should be compassionate.
They have no empathy.
And as I was saying to the students in the back of the room, why doesn't the computer have empathy when I'm getting carpal tunnel syndrome? Why doesn't it start behaving differently so my fingers don't get sore? My computer doesn't have empathy or even compassion.
You can only write code for what you know.
And this is where the humanities scholars in the world, in the room, will know this is a very colonial way of thinking. Do we really want to impose on machines the values of humans? Maybe we should help machines develop their own values, such as curiosity, empathy, and compassion. Okay, everybody, I'm gonna stop there and thank you for your patience. So, you know, my final word is to the students, learn how to be infiltrators between the science building and the art building on this campus. That doesn't mean you have to do a double major. Yep.
One comment.
Go ahead.
I attempted in my algorithmic work to get my code to generate expressive work, and you can look at the show, you can see what's algorithmic, you can see what is not, and I tried to bridge that gap. I'm not saying I did, but I've worked with it. So that's enough.
Okay, so I have studied group psychology. It is the evening, your brains are getting ready to do something else. I'm happy to stay around, discuss things with you and have questions, but I propose we just now stand up and shift mental modes. Thank you so much for your attention, and thank you for giving me the energy of hope. Thank you.